for the average Australian, of course, ultraviolet radiation down under is so strong, even under a hat or an awning, even though we may not be in direct sun rays, the ultraviolet energy is on our skin.
Dr. Cussell, I'm delighted to have you on the show. Welcome to Ageless by Rescue.
Thank you very much.
I feel like my show wouldn't be complete without having you on it. You are a very well-respected expert in skincare, so much so that you've launched your own skincare brand, which I mentioned at the beginning of the episode. And I'm really excited in this show to debunk some of the myths in skincare formulation, but also what can and can't be achieved with skincare, which, as we know, is actually the third missing piece of the puzzle of rejuvenation.
Yes, definitely.
So, Dr. Cussell, can you start by explaining the philosophy behind using multiple active ingredients? In fact, you use 30 active ingredients in your Rejuvos product. Why has this approach been more beneficial, do you think?
Well, I think the major issue really with skincare is people, even if they're skincare aficionados, don't want to use too many bottles on their skin. It's too complex, it's too time consuming, it often involves layering. So we wanted to come up with a way of combining many active ingredients into the one bottle so that skincare was adhered to, was complied with. People would spend 1 or 2 minutes every morning and every night. And it's the incremental and regular use of skincare that creates the advantage. And there's no reason to separate them. The products mix together in the skin, so why not mix them together in the bottle?
It's so good that you should say that, because I always think of my listener as a citizen scientist, but a citizen scientist doesn't have a chemistry degree. And so when we are in store, online, curating our own skincare program, or even if we're being advised by an expert, it is hard to get it right and to know what layers with what, when you should not use something together. So if there is a shortcut to this, code, I'm all for it. I'd love to know what this shortcut is.
Well, the shortcut is actually formulating them all together in a way that they do work synergistically and don't clash. So it's a matter of examining the ingredients and see in what form, if particular well-known ingredients such as, say, L-ascorbic acid or retinol or prescription vitamin A may clash, is there an alternate form that can be used that works just as well, if not better, but that can be combined? And this is what we did. So over many years, we formulated and reformulated and tested and found ways of combining these products together.
Can you talk me through the process of compounding and formulating the active ingredients and how you can achieve these categories of action on the skin?
Sure. Well, I certainly wasn't a formulator. I knew what ingredients worked on the skin, and reading the scientific information, the information's readily available. What we found is that many people would only use 1 or 2 active ingredients in a bottle. Therefore, a lot of the components of what was in the bottle were fillers, and the fillers tended to often block the absorption of the ingredients or interfere with them. And the reactions that we found when people reacted to skin was due to some of the fillers, the chemicals in them that caused individual sensitivity. So when we formulated, we went to various different formulators, told them what we wanted, how we wanted to, for instance, combine vitamin A and vitamin B and vitamin C in the one bottle, and all the different forms of those 3 very important antioxidants, and found ways of combining them. So, for instance, if you want me to go into detail, retinol, vitamin A, prescription vitamin A, retinoic acid, which is the parent compound, is very irritating, can't be used twice a day because it causes dryness and irritation. Vitamin C in the strongest form was always L-ascorbic acid, which was an acid, couldn't be mixed with a lot of the other ingredients, tended to cause individual reactions in a lot of people. Well, we found that a much safer and just as strong form of vitamin A in retinaldehyde. Furthermore, we found that by encapsulating retinaldehyde, it was slow release. You didn't get a sudden release or whoosh into the skin, so it was much better tolerated. Likewise with vitamin C, probably the richest source of vitamin C that's well known is Kakadu plum.
I know you told me this when we caught up, and I've heard it before, and I know it's an active ingredient, and I've seen it on the back of, bottles before, but the way that you explained how efficacious Kakadu plum is, I wasn't really aware of that.
Well, it's a very rich source of vitamin C, and it's deeply absorbed, and most importantly, it's not an acid. So therefore, it can be mixed with,
Right.
in our antioxidant serum, 33 other products without causing a reaction.
Now, we know that compliance in anything is kind of the underpinning mechanism of success. And by that, I mean, if a product is a pleasure to use, we're way more likely to use it rather than something that's, reactive, as you mentioned before, or doesn't smell nice or doesn't feel nice. And I am curious, given that you're not a formulator yourself, but you work with formulators, how did you manage to get this super high concentration of actives and still for the product to be a pleasure to use? Because I thought that was the alchemy in the brand.
A lot of it is avoidance of ingredients that tend to be sticky, leave a greasy residual film on the skin, and they're basically the blockers.
They're the what?
Well, they're the skin blockers, particularly the silicones, the silicanes. We try to avoid any harsh petrochemicals.
Often they put silicone in a product to make it feel silky. And with hair products too, you think, oh my gosh, this feels so beautiful. It's so emollient, it glides on. And then you have all your problems down the track. But at first use, anything with that silky skin is such a pleasure to use. And as I said, I was quite surprised that you had all of that silkiness and the pleasurableness, feeling, but the formula was still clean.
Well, a lot of the silkiness comes from not only the active ingredients like hyaluronic acid, which adds that silky feel, but it's a lot of the botanical seed extracts and fruits that tend to produce that as well. So there's a lot of very powerful, but really gentle, non-invasive antioxidants and botanical, that give that silky feel as well.
You talked about encapsulation before. And again, for my citizen scientists that are listening, I would love for you to share what encapsulation is and how you've made a significant aspect of your formulations. How does this technology help stabilize?
We use four important ingredients in an encapsulation form, and they're the products that tend to be reactive and cause redness and irritation and dryness, particularly vitamin A. So retinaldehyde is a very strong form of vitamin A that's well tolerated. We, for instance, use it in a very high concentration, 1%. Very few people can use 1% retinoic acid, which is a prescription form, let alone retinol, which is a much weaker form, or the retinol derivatives. By encapsulating it, it's in a particle that's released slowly over a period of 8 to 12 hours.
I guess the last time I heard about encapsulation was in, vitamins that we would see on the back of a packet, that it's encapsulated. So it's a slow release or all-day release. Would that be the same kind of analogy here with skincare?
Exactly. It's released slowly over a long period of time.
Okay.
Which, if you think about it, makes the ingredient work a lot better, because instead of getting a sudden absorption, which may have its peak activity over the first few hours, it's got a slow, gradual release into the skin over an 8 to 12 hour period. So it's got to work more effectively because it's working continuously, not only throughout the day and throughout the night. Our skin doesn't stop going through the metabolic process at night time. So it's very important.
Do you think, you know how there's a lot of talk about what our body does at night is very different. So it's the period of rest is a great time for repair, and skincare that you use at night should be tapped into that natural repair cycle. Is there some truth to that? And does encapsulation of products that are being used at night help in supporting that natural process of repair during sleep?
Well, our circulation continues all day and all night. The only thing that's missing at night time is ultraviolet radiation, which our skin's protected with a very good, effective sunscreen anyhow. So the metabolism of the skin and our foods and everything in our metabolism works just as well at night time as daytime. The hormonal variation changes, and so your diurnal rhythm variation changes, but the metabolism occurs during the night.
I would hope so.
Most things in medicine are common sense. You don't need a scientific formulation or testing to show it.
Well, I think it's funny that you should say that. Common sense, yes, but we have been bombarded with a lot of marketing speak in skincare, and a lot of simple things in skincare have been encapsulated, for lack of a better word, with all this science talk. And I don't know whether it was originally designed to make us feel more safe and more excited that we were in safe hands, but in the end, it ended up bamboozling most people. And so when you are approaching a skincare routine, it's hard to apply common sense because I feel like there's such a lot of information in the atmosphere, whether you're getting it from social media or you're getting it from friends or you're getting it from supposed experts. So for me, what I like to do with the show is to bring on the experts and say, hey, exactly as you said before, a lot of this is common sense. Let's go back to the building blocks of why this works, so that you can make a more informed decision if you're left to your own devices online. Or if you stumble into a Mecca or whatever, or a store, you're not just buying anything and creating a cocktail nightmare on your skin.
Well, that's really why we've formulated Rejuvis, because there's no reason to limit what ingredients you put on your skin. We know that there's so many hundreds of effective ingredients on the skin, but we know that there's really only 8 classes or categories of action, and each of those have many, many ingredients. And as long as the individual ingredients in that category is effective, there's no reason why they can't be applied at once, and therefore they're going to have the effectiveness. Now, the majority of people don't look after their skin terribly well. We're lucky if they'll wash their face once or twice a week.
Not my listeners. We're doing it all.
Yes, no. So your listeners, skincare.
We're PhD
aficionados, and you're very conscious and aware of what works and what doesn't work, and you're inquiring into the latest ingredients. But the majority of people don't. So we wanted to devise a skincare that people could use in a very short period of time, morning and night, they're more likely to comply with doing that, where they're going to see the benefit of this on the skin. After all, if people don't see a benefit, they're not going to keep using it. Now, if your clientele, your listeners are very keen and skincare aficionados, and they're looking for the latest and greatest invention, every year there's 1 or 2 new wonder products that come out, whether it's a snail slime type ingredient or a salmon sperm type ingredient.
I literally tried it all. I've tried the salmon sperm and I really like it. And I've tried the snail. And the other day, you're going to laugh. I don't know if I had this conversation with you, but I went and got prescription vaginal estrogen that I want to try under my eyes. because, I'm curious. I get excited to buy all of these ingredients. But then I had this conversation with you and you said to me, hold up. Tell me how you're using your sunscreen. But before we get to sunscreen, I wanted to ask you, I wanted to circle back to vitamin C, because I feel like vitamin C is one of those ingredients that we're all now aware of, but some of us have made friends with it and some of us are yet to find the vitamin C product that works for us. And I know that it took me a long time to find the right vitamin C. So we know it's essential in skincare. We know that not all vitamin Cs are created equal. And I'm wondering if we could circle back to your commentary and your use of Kakadu plum and its comparison to L-ascorbic acid, and how Kakadu plum can be more efficacious in a skincare formulation as our source of vitamin C.
Well, originally we were using what was recognised as the strongest form of pure ascorbic acid, vitamin C, which was L-ascorbic acid. But because we treat a lot of problematic skins in our clinics, we found that a lot of people who had acne or an inflammatory reaction on the skin reacted to that acid form. So we wanted to find a non-acid form of vitamin C. And there's a lot of research being done into the Australian superfood, which is Kakadu plum, grown on a berry on a tree in northern Australia. And it's well known as the richest source of vitamin C. Because it wasn't in an acid form, we found that compounding it created deep absorption. And we were able to use it on the most inflammatory active acne condition, a rosacea condition.
Which is unusual for a strong vitamin C product to be accepted by those skin conditions, right?
Yeah, it is. And, the fact it's such an important antioxidant ingredient in reducing inflammation and in helping to repair skin, it was very well tolerated. And because it's absorbed slowly, it doesn't actually need to be encapsulated. It stays in the skin for a long time. Essentially, what we found by using it over so many hundreds of people over so many years, we found it was very well accepted, so we didn't need to make a change. We're constantly formulating and reformulating and trying to come up with better ways if we get intolerance. But the current form of Rejuvis, we get very little intolerance, very little reactivity. And that's mainly because we're able to avoid the product that common sense and science tells you are likely to react with certain skin types.
Dr. Cussell, one of the things that I find very interesting about your work and the fact that you have a skincare brand is that your laboratory is really the multiple clinics that you run. And so more than any other formulator, certainly anyone that I've met, you have got in-clinic evidence of what the products that you're creating can do for skin alongside the aesthetic treatments that you offer. So in your clinics, you are seeing the power of good skincare alongside all the other rejuvenation modalities that are available to you in a clinical setting. And I'm wondering if you can share with us why someone who had a clinic that can do all of the things said, no, the missing link is good skincare. Because to me, that's a really fascinating, I guess, endorsement of why what you're doing is really important.
It's not only the experience with all of our clients and customers, but also the big staff. We've always had between 25 and 50 staff, and a lot of their families use these products. So we're constantly getting feedback from all of them.
You've got your own live laboratory and clinical.
I think so, and particularly if people are very open and they know they're trying the product and giving feedback on it, you're more likely to get a consistent and real feedback than just conducting surveys.
I do want to go back to my question, though, on how does really good active skincare, how does it work alongside aesthetic treatments? Like we've talked about you're super invested in technology in your clinics. you offer all of the options when it comes to rejuvenation services.
Yes, we do.
What does the skincare component give you that if you had a patient who was just using average skincare, excuse me, I'll ask the question again. Sorry, Asad, could you please edit that out? Can I just ask you once again, given that you have these clinics, network of clinics, and you have invested in absolutely every single technological device, you do all of the aesthetic treatment, what do you know or what do you see in terms of a patient that is also investing in good skincare versus a patient who isn't? Are you seeing the duration of the aesthetic treatments working longer, working better? What's the difference between someone who, comes in for laser or energy device or injectables and is also using skincare that's highly effective?
Definitely. For instance, we won't start anyone on a laser, particularly with the risk of post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation, without preparing their skin. But we know if we're going to use lasers or energy devices to try and improve skin, they're going to get better results and be able to maintain that better by the products they're putting on their skin twice a day. For instance, if we do a facial or a peel, or we do a laser peel or even a laser ablation, the skin needs to be prepared and it needs to be maintained. Now, the skin epidermal layer replaces itself every month or so. So there's no point in doing a treatment which may produce a good result after a month, and then you see the patient 2 or 3 months later and they're back to where they were. That was the situation we're in probably for the first 10 years of our cosmetic clinic experience. We were using a lot of cosmeceutical type brands, not just over-the-counter brands. We had at one stage about 24 different cosmeceutical brands we were retailing on our ground floor in our George Street store, and we would try and get people to use those. And we found that people kept coming back with the recurrence of their problem 2, 3, 4 months later. And that was my frustration with some of the ingredients. Number one, people would only buy 1 or 2, maybe 3 bottles, but they were only getting 3 or 4 actives.
Yes.
They weren't getting the improvement. And we found once we started to formulate multiple ingredients in the same bottle, they were preparing the skin for 2 or 3 weeks before using a laser or before using any energy device. You could see them back 3 or 4 months later, and because they were maintaining that improvement in the skin complexion twice daily, and most people do comply with it, they were getting better results.
One of the things that I learned about your products when I was first introduced to them about a year ago is that you are very passionate about using a high concentration of growth factors and collagen. And I am really keen for you to explain what a growth factor is and also how peptide technology works in skincare. Because I think that there's a lot of chatter about, single ingredients, and we know about vitamin B or niacinamide, we know about vitamin C, we know about vitamin A. But really, for good rejuvenating skincare, growth factors and peptides are key underpinning technologies that you have to avail yourself to, right?
Yes, I agree they're key, but they really only are one of the 8 categories of ingredients, but they all work synergistically together. And that means they help each other to maintain and create the maximum improvement. Growth factors and collagen peptides, proteins, structures that help the metabolic processes in the skin. They help with DNA metabolism and RNA production, and they help with collagen stimulation. So they're necessary. After all, if we're going to improve the skin, we've got to not only be able to use exfoliants and cleansers to get the products into the skin, but then we've got to do things to stimulate new collagen growth. And these are the key ingredients. Most of our products have 1 or 2, and in some cases up to 8 different collagen peptides and growth factors. Now, they're difficult to formulate. Well, they're not difficult to formulate. They're expensive to formulate because they're some of the most expensive ingredients. And that's why a lot of people don't use a lot of growth factors. But our comprehensive serums all have certain amounts of growth factors in them, particularly even things like marine collagen, which and the various sea algae are very good collagen stimulators.
And obviously, when you are looking for a skincare program to, tie yourself to, you have to, as you say, think about all of the actions that you want your skin to take. So, talking about collagen and protein, which you talked about in skincare, is kind of new. It's collagen, not so much, but certainly protein and redensifying the skin and rebuilding the skin is just as important as speeding up the exfoliation process, brightening the skin, soothing the skin, hydrating the skin. And I guess it's very few brands that talk to those 8 key factors. And I'm wondering, when did you have that aha moment where you went, hang on a second, skincare is only doing this. We need to be doing all these 8 things?
Well, when you examine the categories of action, probably the most important one, of course, is sunscreen. So you said you wanted to circle back to that.
I do.
But the sunscreen doesn't need to penetrate, but all the other ingredients do. The epidermal layer is a layer that's built from a basal or stem cell layer where we produce cells every minute of the day and every minute of the night. And as those cells push the earlier those cells further up towards the surface, because the epidermal skin doesn't have a blood supply, the skin cells gradually run out of nutrients. And that's why after 30 days, they're flat and they're dead, and they'll form often a dead entrapment layer on the surface of the skin, which is where cleansing and exfoliating comes in. You've got to be able to thin that entrapment layer, improve the microbiome on the surface of the skin so your active ingredients can get in there. And then your antioxidant groups, your pigment inhibitors, your hydrators, the true hydrators, the hyaluronic acids, the barrier repair ingredients, your anti-inflammatories, and your other main ingredients have got a chance of penetrating deeply. Pre and probiotics are important to stay on the surface of the skin where they help to balance and restore and keep a healthy microbiome. Really, really important as well. So all of those factors are important. Now, your growth factors are going to work in the deeper layers of skin and your collagen peptides because they're the living, active, vital cell layer, if you like, of the epidermal skin. Nothing penetrates beyond the epidermal skin. Probably the only proven ingredient that penetrates deeper is vitamin A. But your collagen peptides are really working on those surface cells as well. But they're not going to get to the active surface cells and stimulate the metabolic activity, DNA and RNA, unless they can get down there. So that's why looking at the whole group of ingredients is so important. So, for instance, every one of our 4 serums and 4 creams have at least 7 of the 8 categories of action in each bottle. Most people will only buy 1 or 2 bottles, so you've got to combine them together. We find very few people who are going to buy 4 or 5 bottles of skincare because of the expense.
You mentioned the skin biome, and I know that this is a hot topic. I've talked about it a lot recently because it keeps coming up. And I was really interested to read that not only have you incorporated ingredients in your range that protect the skin biome and also help rebuild compromised dermal layers, but can you also discuss the benefits of why you think topical probiotics for the skin and why you prefer them over oral probiotics?
Well, it's not that we prefer them over oral probiotics. So, keeping a healthy gut microbiome is extremely important for all our organs. And of course, the skin's just a big organ. The reason that we use topical antibiotics is the blood supply doesn't carry the oral nutrients to the surface. So by the time the skin cells have made their way to the surface, they've run out of nutrients, they're flat. But that's often, and it's always some entrapment layer, because it takes quite a few hours or days for the sticky bonds on the surface of the skin to break so that the cells can be washed away with an exfoliant cleanser, for instance. And that entrapment layer forms a nidus for infection. The dead cells, the trapped oil, the trapped debris could and does often cause an imbalance of that microbiome. That's why so many people...
I never even thought of that.
That's why so many people get dryness and redness and inflammation on the surface of the skin.
So the pollutants and anything else can also, and even your diet that's producing, too much oil or dryness in your skin, then gets trapped. And if you're not cleansing it correctly, it's affecting your microbiome.
Well, when we cleanse, we're cleansing away the oil, the free pigment, the dirt, the makeup, etc., that's sitting on the surface of the skin. But even a strong AHA cleanser isn't always capable of separating all the dead cell bonds until they're separated. So some people's dead cells may stick to the skin for weeks at a time, whereas in a good skin, the cells are with good skincare, the cells are separated almost immediately. And that's why we use a leave-on salicylic acid and AHA in one of our key products called clarifying serum.
Yes.
So we know that blocking or entrapment layer is thin. That allows all your active ingredients to get in there. But still you need to maintain that healthy microbiome. So in all our products, we contain 2 pre, pro and postbiotics that people are constantly putting on, and that's going to help to balance that external microbiome.
And what about hyaluronic acid? Obviously that is the most talked about ingredient in skincare for the past 2 years. I know that you obviously incorporate plenty of hyaluronic acid in your skincare, but you use different types with different molecular sizes of hyaluronic acid. Is that correct?
Correct. The normal hyaluronic acid, sodium hyaluronate, which is in many skincare, it's quite a large particle size and it doesn't absorb very deeply. So it's very good for drawing water into the surface of the skin. But the low molecular weight, or the product called hydrolyzed hyaluronic acid, is a much smaller particle size. It actually gets absorbed much more deeply, so it actually draws water. Hyaluronic acid is a hygroscopic substance, meaning it draws water into itself. So the low molecular weight hyaluronic acid, it actually not only draws water into the deeper intracellular matrix, the fluid between the cells, but through the cell wall into the cells themselves. So you're actually clumping up the cells.
So if you're not, this is a conversation we had when we met recently. When you have those brands that have got a single key claim, so, this is a hyaluronic acid, and you're just using that on top of maybe 4 or 5 other skincare products, you're not really getting the best out of that wonder ingredient, are you?
No, and it depends on the amount you use. Now, in fact, you don't need a huge amount of hyaluronic acid because it's a very efficient hydrator. It absorbs water. The other thing I meant to say about the hydrolyzed hyaluronic acid is it has other benefits other than just drawing water in. It actually helps with free radical damage. It actually helps with pigmentation. It actually helps with skin collagen production.
Really? Yeah.
It's a very efficient and effective product. And there's a lot of investigation and trials being done on different forms of hyaluronic acid. It's a very expensive ingredient, particularly the low molecular weight or hydrolyzed one. So that's why a lot of people don't put it in their skincare, but it's very effective.
And now we get to your favorite topic. Certainly my favorite topic is effective sunscreen, how to use it and why it's so vital as part of a proper cosmeceutical effective skincare regimen. If you're going to clinics for injectables, if you're having any kind of aesthetic treatment and you're not using sunscreen, you may as well not be doing anything. Is that right?
Yes, and for the average Australian, of course, ultraviolet radiation down under is so strong, and ultraviolet radiation is an energy in the air. You don't need to be in direct sunlight. It penetrates through glass, so we're getting it when we're driving in a car. We're getting it when working near a window at home, even under a hat or an awning, even though we may not be in direct sun rays, the ultraviolet energy is on our skin. And a lot of people aren't sunbaking constantly throughout the day, but they're getting gradual absorption over a period of many years. And that's what ages the skin and causes damage. So how can you prevent it? Well, you need to use a sunscreen every single day.
And you laughed at me when I told you that I wasn't reapplying. It was like, okay, well, good luck with that.
Well, most people won't reapply things. It's hard enough to get people to apply a product in the morning. Chemical sunblocks lose their SPF because they're very efficient at drawing in the ultraviolet radiation around their skin. But what that does is it breaks down the chemical. So the chemicals are used up after an hour and a half or 2 hours, and the SPF might drop from 50 to less than 10 in 2 hours. And that's really why you need to reapply. They're called the chemical substances, and they're not good for us anyhow, because the chemicals are petrochemicals. You've only got to read the names. If they end in a zine or something like that, they sound like a petrochemical, and they are. And they're absorbed through our skin, and there's a lot of evidence that they can affect the liver. The physical sunblocks, on the other hand, are the opposite. They're reflective particles or minerals of zinc and titanium dioxide. And when you put it on the skin, you need to put a thick enough layer on the skin to be able to reflect the ultraviolet energy. The reflective barrier stays on the skin all day until you wash it off, or sweat it off, or wipe it off. Now, obviously, when you go swimming with any sunscreen, you need to reapply, but most of us don't swim constantly every day. It's the slow accumulation of ultraviolet radiation that does the energy. So physical sunblock, if you put it on well, lasts all day.
And yours is lovely to use, and it doesn't feel like zinc, old-fashioned zinc. It goes on really well under makeup. It works. It was really hard for me to switch to physical sunblock. I had a mental block about it because, I grew up in the 80s. Zinc is still a traumatic experience. You remember it being that crazy white cast and thick, block all your pores. But
yes, and it's very hard to formulate. So it was very hard, number one, to find a zinc that was relatively thin and spreadable, that produced an even coating, that didn't produce a white cast, and wasn't sticky and greasy. And of course, more than half of our clients are female and they want to put makeup on. And most makeup doesn't sit well on zinc. But the other physical component in the physical sunblocks is titanium dioxide. It's actually quite a good primer for skin care. So we, in our iSolar in the Rejuvenation range, we've got a physical sunblock that's non-sticky, non-greasy, doesn't leave a white cast, spreads really easily, isn't a barrier to putting makeup on at all, and we know is there all day.
And so with the physical sunblock, such as the one that you formulated, if you're just using it, say you're going to the office, you're driving your kids around, you're, going for a walk in the park, you don't need to reapply it every 2 hours, like the chemical sunblock?
No, you don't. You just need to be wary that if you find yourself in direct sunlight and you really think you have been doing some exercise and sweating it off, you just need to have a routine of reapplying it. So obviously a lot of people go to the gym at lunchtime,
Yes.
they need to reapply. But the average day when you're at home or when you go to the office, if you put a layer of zinc sunscreen on, it's there. Now, there are other important things to note about zinc. Zinc is not only a difficult product to formulate, it also has different forms. There's a nano zinc and a non-nano zinc.
That's right. Yeah, I was about to ask you about that. Great.
And in Rejuvis, we use the non-nano zinc because a nano zinc or nanoparticles generally, not a proven science, but it's suspected from the scientific investigation that does affect the DNA production and DNA activity in the skin. So if you can use non-nano zinc, it's actually harder to formulate a higher SPF with a non-nano zinc than a nano zinc. But it's obviously safer. And everything we do is to try and avoid a reaction and people not using their sunscreen, because if they don't like using the sunscreen, if it has any barrier to use, they're not going to use it, let alone reapply it if they go.
You know, throughout this conversation, what I'm hearing is your reference back to clean ingredients, safety, and the pleasure of using the products. And I think that one of the things that we haven't really talked about, I mean, you've touched on throughout, is that consumers are increasingly concerned about the safety of skincare ingredients. And I'm wondering, as someone who is putting a product out there, how do you ensure the safety and efficacy of your formulations?
Basically by formulating them pure and avoiding the filler substances, particularly the petrochemicals, particularly the silicons, and not putting astringent or harsh petrochemical type preservatives, things like pigments, even fragrances. So all of our products are produced in, for instance, an airless light-proof container where we don't need to pull. You do need, when you formulate skincare, to use things that will help to mix the ingredients well and keep them suspended in solution. But you can use natural products.
So in terms of preservatives, you can use natural preservative?
Yes, for instance, even in our airless containers, we're required by law to put preservative in, but we use the minimal amount, which is 0.25% of a natural lemongrass. Our lemongrass is quite therapeutic for the skin in itself. It has a nice lemon fragrance, which universally is pretty well accepted. And it doesn't affect the solution at all. It doesn't affect the spreadability. In fact, it enhances it. So it's very well tolerated. And of course, it's not absorbed into our body or our liver like a lot of the preservatives are.
You mentioned before how many of the customers that you serve or patients that you have in the clinic will not buy an entire range of skincare when they come in due to cost, or perhaps they're using other things that they want to finish up, or they enjoy using other things. If you were to see a patient and they wanted to get a couple of great things that are going to really make a difference in their skincare program, I know that you can't say it universally for everyone, but are there two things from your range that you would say, okay, Rejuva just does this better, and I would love for you to incorporate this into your skincare so that you can get a great result? What would those two things be?
Definitely our antioxidant ABC serum, which has got 33 different ingredients covering 7 of the 8 categories of action. And also a product called Clarify and Renew, which has many growth factors and collagen peptides, but very importantly, it's got a slow release exfoliant with AHAs and a very high concentration, 15% of an encapsulated salicylic acid, which is the BHA. So that's producing the clean, unblocked surface so that your active ingredients can get in. It's not drying or stripping like you'd imagine salicylic acid to be. In fact, it's got a lot of hydration because it's got both hyaluronic acids in, and it's also got a lipid complex that helps to repair the skin barrier. And that's very important. So you're not only hydrating the cells by drawing water in, but you're preventing leakage or evaporation. It's also got collagen peptides and growth factors, as I said. It's got pigment inhibitors in it. So it's and it's got pre and probiotics. So you're putting
for those two products, where would I incorporate it into my skincare? So say those are the two that I take from you, and I've got my routine going. How would I incorporate those in to get the best out of those active ingredients and that formulation?
Again, our philosophy is very simple. If you're spending 30 seconds cleansing your face with a proper NHA cleanser and dry your face, you can put both serums on together.
Oh, okay.
We use a light-proof airless container with a micro dispensing nozzle, which only dispenses 0.2 of a mil. So you're putting one pump of both serums in your hand. You're spreading it all over your face, safe on your eyelids. Because it's so spreadable and liquid, it will spread over your face, neck, and even décolletage, and wipe the rest on the back of your hands. So it spreads over a wide area, and you've got your skincare in 5 seconds. The products aren't sticky or greasy. They get absorbed almost instantly. So there's no barrier to using them together. They don't need to be layered.
I have to ask you something, which is, I'm sure everyone asks you this every dinner party you ever go to. What's next? What's next in skincare, and what's next in your laboratory? I'm dying to know.
I know you're trying to say what are some new magic ingredients.
I can't do what.
As you said, there's always going to be a few magic ingredients that come out, and that's important. And if we can incorporate those and they'll blend synergistically with ours, we'll use it. We're certainly we are producing a leave-on mask, which is something that a lot of people like to play with at night time and will add to the hydration or the tightness of the skin. But our philosophy is that if you're using all of these ingredients twice a day, and most of them are working constantly and gradually throughout the day and throughout the night, you don't really need much. One of the biggest new things we've found about in skincare formulation is a product called fibrillated cellulose. Now, it's a product that's manufactured, it's only new, manufactured out of Holland, and it's being imported into Australia at the moment. What it does, it's a mixing agent, if you like. It's a water replacement. So as you know, most skincare has a huge amount of water in it.
Right, when you look at the Inky list, you go, what on?
Many skincare has water disguised as aqua, and it might be well over 50 or 60% of the ingredient. What we tend to do is we use aloe vera water, which adds a new dimension to it. But of course, it's a diluent. It's to help make the product activated or fibrillated cellulose is different. It's got particular particulate strands on it in the molecular structure. When it's mixed into the solution, helps the solution, the active ingredients, be spread more uniformly and diversely through the product, and help the spreadability of the product even more. Now, our products are very spreadable. One of the main products we're putting it into is, in fact, our physical zinc sunscreen.
I said to make it even.
So we want to try and make that as thin a lotion as possible, but still have that really strong reflective barrier of the SPF 50 or greater. And for instance, the tests that have been done in Holland with the SPF, many different sunscreens, find that just replacing, say, 30% of the water, or the aloe vera water, with this fibrillated cellulose, increases not only the spreadability, but it surprisingly increases the SPF of the product by a factor of 10. So that's
the magic ingredient to look out for.
So anything to improve the acceptability, the spreadability, the tolerance, and the efficacy of the product.
Well, thank you so much. I love our lesson today in skincare science. I really appreciate your time. I'm hoping to learn more about what you do, and I'd love to invite you back on the show as the new formulations come through. Thank you so much for being on the show. I always love discussing skincare because I think it's something very egalitarian that we can all get involved with when it comes to improving our skin health, but also how we look. And definitely I can see, I have photos of, when I was in my mid-30s, and I'm 50 now, and the quality of my skin is better at 50 than it was in my mid-30s. And the only difference is good skincare. So whenever someone says to me, what can I do? What can I do? I don't have a lot of money to do the aesthetic things. I always say, switch up your skincare. It's the one thing you can absolutely do that quite quickly can give you a very satisfactory result. So it was wonderful to learn more so that we can make better decisions. I really appreciate you being on the show.
All right. Thanks for having me. Pleasure.